Hey, how's it going? I'm Ron.
I'm Zach.
We're from Widetrack, and it's another episode of Influences. Today, we're going to talk about a band called the Mars Volta. Zach, I'm going to let you start this one off.
All right. Created from the... I actually don't know if they went on at the same time or not. I'd have to brush on it. Created from the ashes, somewhat, of At the Drive-In. Mars Volta is a very progressive band that is pretty new in progressive standards.
Yes, the Mars Volta, I believe they formed in 2002, 2003, and they put out their first album. Actually, I think they put out an EP called Tremulant in 2002 or 2003.
And then their first album, Deloused in the Comatorium, was released in 2003.
Yes. Led by the team of Omar Rodriguez Lopez on guitar and Cedric Bixler Zavala on lead vocals and manic dance moves. They've had quite a few musicians in and out of the band.
In fact, Flea even played the bass lines on their first album.
Yep, Deloused in the Comatorium is a personal favorite. One of my favorite albums that's ever been recorded in the existence of albums, and has a fantastic drummer named John Theodore, who is now playing with the Mars Volta.
He's now playing with Queens of the Stone Age.
I mean, Queens of the Stone Age.
It's been a rough night.
Yeah.
Lots of listening to the Mars Volta.
But yes, on their first album, Deloused in the Comatorium, Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers played bass. And the interesting thing about this band is they combined an unlikely union of styles. They took progressive rock
and punk,
and they mixed it together, and the results are just mind-blowing.
Which is really interesting because each other thinks, wow, the other guys are idiots.
Yeah, yep.
Most times.
They definitely knocked down all the preconceptions of, punk rock is quite a bit known for looking at progressive rock and saying that sucks. And progressive rock,
just how uncultured.
Yeah, oh, those guys can't play. But if you take the beauty of those two energies and styles and combine them, Mars Volta is a great example of what can happen.
Something like nothing other.
Indeed. So in 2003, they started their band off, and their live performances were quite a bit different from Deloused in the Comatorium, which, by the way, was produced by Rick Rubin, which I'm sure that's where the Flea connection came from, as Rick Rubin produced all of Chili Peppers' best-selling albums, Blood Sugar Sex Magik, Californication. He brought the best out of the band, but their live performances were quite a bit different. They were so polished in the studio, but live they had an attitude of anything goes. And
because they were jumping around so much, they didn't sound too good.
Yeah, they were really...
They had to master the art.
It was like a bunch of Tasmanian devils on stage. It was quite comical in a way.
Stage was all they were on?
Yeah, all right. So they toured, and then they got a more solid bass player in Juan Alderete, who used to be John Alderete in a 80s shredder band called Racer X. Fantastic bass player, and he brought a cohesion. Had a keyboard player named Ike Owens, I believe his last name was. Just a fantastic lineup, and they took that lineup and they created their second album called
Francis the Mute.
Francis the Mute.
With only, I believe, 5 songs on it, with radio hit, or 2 radio hits if you count the radio out.
The Widow, yeah, the big radio hit from the band. Deloused in the Comatorium, it had televators. There, you could find the video.
Francis the Mute had The Widow, Roulette Dares, and...
No, Roulette Dares was on Deloused in the Comatorium.
Oh, it was?
Yep.
Oh, I believe that one was also semi-radio hit as well.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
I remember it being mentioned somewhere. And then they also had a shortened version of a song I'm not even going to try and pronounce, but it's the only song on the album that I'm not going to try and pronounce. And there was a radio edit of it. I think it got some airplay.
Oh, the one that's, yeah, he sang in
Spanish.
Spanish. Something. Yeah, you're right. I guess I should brush up on my Spanish a little bit.
I should brush up on my Mars Volta.
But that album is regarded as their epic
masterpiece
by the progressive rock fan standards.
34-minute song.
Yeah, they have.
I approve.
They kind of go on a journey, and I'm gonna get Zach a little upset here, but I saw them on that tour, and to this day, that was in 2005. Saw them in Detroit at a theater, and to this day, that is the best live performance I've ever seen a band do in all my concerts I've ever seen. They were just dynamic and fantastic on stage. John Theodore's drumming was top-notch, just so inspirational, and they just blew me away. I've never seen a band put that kind of energy out on stage, not even close. They were unmatched in that regard. So then they put out their third album, which is quite Amputexture, and that was to be their last album with John Theodore. They parted ways with him shortly after, a few dates after releasing the album. That album is even further down the progressive rock rabbit hole.
I've only listened to the first 2 songs, and so far I think it's great, but I've heard opinions speaking otherwise.
It's quite a journey. It's been a difficult listen for me, but
so as far as I know, it's a really good album.
We're kind of revisiting it here, and it's going down a little bit better 10 years later. So it is a fan favorite. A lot of Omar and Cedric describe it as their autistic child album. So it's very non-commercial, I guess is probably the way to put it.
That's a little offensive. It's 2017, Dad.
Yeah. So they went in, when they toured behind that album, they were kind of shuffling drummers in and out. They fired John Theodore, and they were kind of out to adrift for a little while, and they were doing opening dates for the Chili Peppers, and they were just kind of trying to keep the band together, and they finally got a guy named Thomas Pridgen on drums.
And they said, well, okay, let's just get him to know the band. And so they took an hour. He connected with everyone really well, and then they said, let's make him play in front of 20,000 people with us.
And we're just going to improvise. And
it worked.
He said, okay, and he was that kind of drummer. Another mind-blowing drummer, Thomas Pridgen. At the time, I think he was only 20 years old.
They've got a much more detailed and story about how he truly came into the band. I think he... never mind.
Yeah, he was kind of an award-winning guy that they caught sight of, and they said, yeah, we got to get this guy. And the band was always about having the best musicians, and along the way they brought in you know, saxophone players and percussionists and different musicians to kind of round out the sound. Very much a Santana meets Led Zeppelin on acid kind of band.
I've heard that somewhere.
Yeah, so once they got Thomas Pridgen, they recorded The Bedlam in Goliath, and that album was even more progressive. It is insanely progressive, and
however, unfortunately, sadly, it does not mean it's good. I know.
It's one of those albums that it's sort of not even rock anymore. It's kind of getting into a Mahavishnu Orchestra jazz freeform kind of thing. Some great stuff on that. I always found it difficult to listen to that, and live it was really difficult seeing Thomas Pridgen play John Theodore's drum parts and kind of
still trying to prove himself. Just,
you know, Yeah, just blasting through everything, and it was
Even when the main slow drum beat should be.
yeah. But that was the second time that I got to see them live, and once again, Cedric was just the best live performer. A funny story, I saw them at Voodoo Fest in 2008, and Cedric, they started playing, and Cedric, true to form, just jumped up, stage dove into the crowd, saw a guy, took his microphone, stuck the microphone through the guy's shirt hole and out the other side of the guy's shirt and started singing, and the guy was just kind of standing there going, okay, I've got a mic cord running through my shirt. And Cedric came by, pulled it off, jumped back up on the stage. The crowd went crazy. And
Yeah, I wasn't there either.
Well, we're gonna see some good shows this year, so. But
I'm not sad.
so they always brought it live. They you know, sometimes they would improvise a whole set and maybe lose the crowd a little bit, but they were always kind of striving for something, you know, trying to find, trying to be true to the moment and try to.
Very Zeppelin-like.
Yeah, very much so. Well, for their next album, they put out
Octahedron, which is. I don't have to choose. Never mind.
It is a
But it's
wonderful album.
one of my favorite albums
Yeah.
of all time. Something just bit me. Oh.
Yeah, they have since we've been wrong, Teflon,
Halo of Nembutals, and with Twilight as my guide, all in a row, of course. And
wonderful.
That's all you need. I mean, that's about a side of the album.
Copernicus is great.
Those 4 songs in a row.
It's
Starts off with
a magnificent album, and they really took a more stripped down approach. A lot of acoustic.
They said, guys.
They really chilled out on that album, and
Guys.
it served them well.
What do we do for our next album? How do we top Battle in Goliath? What do we? We have to come up with something different. I have an idea. What could it possibly be? We slowed down, and suddenly, all the ideas that they had secretly had, that they had been pushing away for so long, from the need to be energetic and fast and complex, all started rushing forward with so
Indeed.
much. I actually don't know the story. That's completely made up. But
They really did feed off of what's the most unexpected thing we can do right now, and I think that's one of the things that really drove them. And of course they toured after that, and I got to see them on that tour too. Sorry.
you got to see them on the Octahedron tour?
Yeah, it was nice. Saw them at a small club. It was really nice. Fantastic as always. And they still had Thomas Pridgeon, but they fired him shortly after the show that I saw them at. And they got another guy, and they put out one last album called
Nocturnicate, with songs such as, oh, there's a beat. Or they put out songs such as the song Nocturnicate, good B-side or unreleased song called Clouds.
Oh, I love that song. That should have been on the album. Yeah.
Bunch of different cool songs.
Venom
In
Lady.
Absentia,
Yeah, In Absentia.
Imago, Aegis.
Yeah. Empty Vessels Make the Loudest Sound. That's a great one.
And
That album is surprisingly good, and it's a whole different lineup, different keyboard player, same bass player, different drummer, and they took a kind of almost like an 80s synth style.
lots of minor notes and stuff.
Yeah.
Kind of like how
The vocals are
reminds me of a little bit of Queensryche.
a little bit. The vocals came down quite a bit on that album. But yeah, they shortly thereafter they played a few dates. They opened up for Soundgarden. My buddies and I were able to catch their last couple tunes in Chicago when we went and saw Soundgarden in 2010 or 2012, I believe, and they were really good. But they broke up shortly thereafter, and I think they just kind of felt like, yeah, we just want to do something else. And I always read that they just got bored real easily, and even so much to the point that they would break bands up because they were just over it, you know. And so to kind of bring it all around to what their influence on us is that they are the most in the moment band that I have ever seen. And as a result, their music is completely honest and true, and they don't even exist in the box. There is no box for them. They have their own landscape that they work, and it's just very inspiring to see a band like that achieve some success, and by just giving a middle finger to all
mainstream media.
All the mainstream. They just said, that's so bland and boring. We are going to do our own thing and exist outside of that. And
it's also pretty inspiring to see the power of what a bored person will do.
Yeah.
Or what a group of bored people.
Right.
Huh, we're bored.
Yeah.
Wonder what we should do. Perhaps art.
And they do consider themselves to be first and foremost artists over musicians. They're always got a self-deprecating attitude about their musicianship, but actually they are some of the best musicians out there.
Which reminds me, kind of on another note, I remember from a friend of his was talking a bit about Yoko Ono, which was John Lennon's, I believe, wife or girlfriend or whatever.
John Lennon's ex-wife.
And how she would do a bunch of abstract sort of avant-garde stuff, and people were saying, oh, that's not really abstract. And I believe his friend went to a college class that explained a lot of these abstract painters, they only do abstract things because they can do regular normal things so well. Like if you tell a abstract painter to paint the most beautiful picture of an apple and just a complete normal picture, he'll be able to do it. Where with Yoko Ono, you'd never really seen anything that wasn't abstract or outside the box, which is, I believe, why people kind of got the impression that it wasn't really like that. But the reason I mention this is because the Mars Volta, or specifically Cedric and Omar, they were in at the drive-in, which is about as, you know, if you see some earlier live footage of that, it's not anything like the Mars Volta. It's very much a just a normal band compared to the Mars Volta, which is, you know, interesting to see that a band like that could transform almost like into a band like the Mars Volta.
It really speaks to their attitude, which is another thing that's influential, where they said, we don't have these limits that we put on ourselves. Like we're a rock band, and just like the marriage of progressive rock and punk, to people coming from a punk background, that is unheard of. They don't even like, but most punk rock fans don't even like progressive rock, and vice versa. It's two styles of music that rarely have ever coexisted together. But these guys said, you know what? I love progressive rock. I love punk. Let's kind of do something. This is kind of what we're feeling, and the results were just brilliant. And they are capable of playing the basics.
As seen with At the Drive-In, which isn't basic, but it's, you know,
it's more basic than the Mars Volta, that's for sure.
It's basic enough to be able to say, hey, that's not completely weird and nonsensical.
Yep.
That's actual music.
Yep.
My goodness.
I think at this point what we would like to start doing with these episodes, and we're going to go back and edit our descriptions, but we're going to be making
a link of our Spotify with playlists of the bands that we talk about, and of course other bands that we don't really think are as big of influences on us quite yet. We'll have playlists of all of them there on our Spotify.
Yeah, just to serve as a little primer
of,
like here's like
our favorite songs.
Here's what our favorite Mars Volta songs are. Maybe these will serve as a primer for you to kind of dig what we're talking about with these guys.
If you haven't heard of the band, of course, then recommended tracks. If you're revisiting the band, if you think the band's great, you know, just
maybe you can. It's always interesting to see what someone's favorite songs of an artist might be, and so we'll be making some playlists and putting them in the description
of all of our influences. Yeah, but of course, we're always open to hearing what your favorite Mars Volta tracks are and your thoughts on the band are.
Yeah, Yeah, some of these bands that we've gotten a lot of feedback, and some of these bands people
as
like,
much, yeah.
and other ones people don't like so much. So we got quite a bit of feedback about the Kiss episode that we did. A lot of people don't like Kiss, and I can definitely relate with that. Like we said in our video,
I thought they were cool.
It's only a 5-year period that I have any interest in those guys whatsoever, but you know, that's the thing about music. It's a very subjective thing, and it's I guess interesting sometimes to see not just what people's influences are, but why. So anyway, we're gonna let you get going here.
We have been the Widetrack.
So keep an eye open for our playlists of these bands that we're covering. We got some other interesting ones coming your way, and always welcome a word from you. So if you got anything to comment on, feel free to shoot it down in the description, the comment section, and until next time, keep on rocking.